Jake, explain this confusing turnaround by Speaker Johnson talking about all these programs and these people who will be affected.
Well, I must say, Katie, having Gentleson and Brendan Buck on set takes me back to the last shutdown, or the first shutdown I covered back, which is like 12 years ago. So it warms my heart to see them on set with you in New York. Katie, listen, Republicans feel at this moment, and I think we'll get a variety of opinions here around this table, this proverbial table, that they have the leg up, and that they are trying to drill down on everything that is not happening right now because of this shutdown. A new thing that is being talked about up here today is the fact that troops are not going to get paid. That's troops get paid on the 15th of the month. And Mike Johnson just told us a couple minutes ago that payments need to be processed, put in place by the 13th, which is just less than a week away. So, and I'll just tell you, Katie, I've not seen one scintilla of movement in days. I mean, this is the most bizarre shutdown of all time. There's not been a single movement. And I just want to fact check one thing that the speaker said. The flood insurance program was expiring regardless of the government shutdown. So that's not entirely in the same bucket. But listen, they're trying to lay all this at the Democrats' feet, which is kind of par for the course.
Listen, it looks quiet there. It looks dark there. It's a good metaphor for exactly what's happening for the government shutdown. So, Brendan, you tell me, are they winning this messaging war, the Republicans?
I think they're winning because they don't have anything to do other than just sort of wait them out. I don't think it's terribly inconsistent for Mike Johnson to say, I think the government should be smaller, but the people who are there, the government should be open. I mean, that's not a bad argument. And then Republicans, of course, are going to talk about the government needs to be open. They're the ones who are passing time and time again a clean bill, the kind of bill that Democrats have voted for many, many times. And so on the sort of merits, and as we've gone through this many times previously, and the shoe was on the other foot, I mean, the argument is very straightforward. Democrats don't really have anything objectionable to what they're passing for. They just want something else. And we've done that before, and to not very great success. It's been a playbook that we've tried time and time again. I think we're learning that it's not a great playbook, and there are real consequences. And I think it's totally fine for Mike Johnson to say, yeah, there are real people impacted by this. We should end the shutdown.
You made a face.
Yeah, I would have to disagree with my esteemed colleague, Brendan, on this one. I think Democrats are winning. I think that every poll so far shows that people blame Republicans.
What does winning mean?
Winning means using this shutdown to explain to Americans that under Republican control, their premiums are about to double or in some cases triple. And I find myself in the unusual position of saying I agree with Marjorie Taylor Greene because she's right. Americans' premiums will go up. And that's something Democrats have actually had difficulty getting across as a message. But this is a very real consequence of Republican governance. And it's something that is going to happen.
Is it a good idea to use the shutdown in order to get some leverage on that?
What I think is that Republicans have unified control of government. And they have majorities in both the Senate and the House. And they have the White House. And if they wanted to fund the government without Democratic votes, they could just go ahead and do so. But if they want Democratic votes, it's entirely natural for Democrats to have to ask something in return. And this is a very reasonable ask because it would save people from having their premiums double. In fact, they're doing Republicans a favor because Republicans, the people's premiums will stay low going into a midterm year. So Republicans
that conveniently overlooks the filibuster, which Democrats are, of course, using.
Well, 3 weeks ago, the Republicans changed the filibuster rules when it suited them. So they do it when it's.
So to explain to the audience, the filibuster is what you need. You can eliminate 60 votes in the Senate, just do 50 votes in order to get something passed. So you're arguing the Republicans can eliminate the filibuster and just pass the funding bill without the Democrats' help. But you would argue that would help the Democrats a lot if the Democrats get elected.
That has been a long time and Adam Gentleson goal to get rid of the filibuster so that when they're in charge, they can kind of do whatever they want. The filibuster serves a good purpose of serving as a check so that we actually have some level of consensus before we make sweeping changes.
And here's where it becomes a problem because there is no consensus. And in the past, Republicans or whoever was in power, if there were not 60 votes to get something done, there would be a negotiation. There would be a compromise. And the Democrats argue, and Jonathan, I'll bring you in on this, there has been no negotiation. There has been no compromise. The Republicans have just said, this is it, take it or leave it. And the Democrats have said, we're going to leave it.
Yeah, I mean, there's been no negotiations. The House of Representatives not even here. Speaker Johnson, of course, sent them home. The White House, look, it feels very bullish about where they stand. They feel like they've got the loudest and best megaphone in the messaging process in President Trump. But I will say there's been a little bit of anxiety that's crept in the last day or so. We even saw Trump yesterday seemingly open the door to some negotiations. I mean, he erroneously claimed those talks had already begun. They haven't, but the White House clarified that. But there's some thought maybe that could come because they understand they can read polls too. They know that the Republican legislation that passed this summer is very badly underwater, at least for now, and that if they see the polls about the shutdown, look, neither party is particularly popular, but Republicans getting more of the blame. And it's also of note here that the Russ vote sort of exists as a bad cop in all of this. The threatened mass firings hadn't followed through on that just yet. And I think there is some. The hope from the White House is that's more perhaps of a bargaining chip, more of a leveraging position than actually something they need to do, because they know that also likely won't go over well with much of the public.
So is that also what they're doing with this memo talking about how they don't have to pay back employees, furloughed employees? I mean, it's a memo that Axios first reported. The White House confirmed it. It also goes against their own OMB assessment, which said this would not be legal under the terms of a shutdown. Why put that out there? Why confirm that if you're the White House, Jonathan?
Again, it's part of the leveraging positions here. They're trying to push this through. And you're right, this is very different than other shutdowns. Traditionally, workers, they're sent home for a time. They are furloughed. Essential workers keep working without being paid, but then they're made good down the road. The back pay comes in. The White House saying no. And Trump is pointing to Russ Vogt as sort of this almost boogeyman. And Vogt has picked up this sort of air of menace among Democrats that's usually reserved for just Stephen Miller in terms of they feel like, hey, he's the driving force behind this, in their words, the dark presence. And Vogt, as we know, has for years, this is sort of his life's work, is the idea of shrinking the bureaucracy, cutting it down, and even as in his own words, inflicting pain on some of those who work for federal government. So that he sees this as an opportunity. He's waiting for Trump to unleash him. That has yet to happen.
So, Adam, on that note, there are a lot of Americans who do believe the government is too big. They believe the government's not working. It's part of a big reason why Donald Trump got reelected and why Republicans got reelected. They promised to blow everything up. How does the Democratic Party approach a sentiment like that is shared by so many Americans? Well,
this is a great opportunity for Democrats to remind people what the government does for them. And one of the things it does for them is to keep their health care premiums low. So I think Democrats, should position themselves in general as being open to reforming the government, to making it more efficient, to shrinking it where it does not serve the interests of the people for whom it's fighting. But this is also a great opportunity to make the case for government and for what it does for you. Democrats have had a hard time breaking through, and this is actually giving them a chance to make that message.
I want to play a little bit of sound from Donald Trump a little earlier today. He was asked about that memo saying people won't get back pay. Here is his response.
Is it the White House's position that furloughed workers should be paid for their back pay?
I would say it depends on who we're talking about. I can tell you this, the Democrats have put a lot of people in great risk and jeopardy, but it really depends on who you're talking about. But for the most part, we're going to take care of our people. There are some people that really don't deserve to be taken care of, and we'll take care of them in a different way. Okay? Thank you.
Jake, I guess the Democrats aren't going to get back pay. How are they going to decide who's a Democrat and a Republican and decide who gets back pay or doesn't get back pay? And is this the sort of thing that Republicans on the Hill are happy to hear from the President of the United States?
Who the hell knows, Katie? I'm not trying to be glib, but Mike Johnson said today, like minutes before this, that he had talked to the president and the president had said he wants to give back pay to federal employees. I mean, Mike Johnson said it. He offered that up. I didn't ask him if he had this conversation. He just said, I want to give back pay to people, and so does the president. So I don't know the answer to that. And I would say that, first of all, it's a law. That's number one. And number two, it'll be in a lot of members' interests, including Republicans, to give people back pay.
Let me ask you this then. Marjorie Taylor Greene, is she somebody that will force the issue of these subsidies? If it's not during the shutdown, then after this shutdown?
No, Brendan and I were having this conversation last night about just the political impact of it. I think Marjorie Taylor Greene is not emblematic of a ton. She goes her own way on some issues, but I think it speaks to a larger truth, which is there are a lot of Republicans who are going to want these subsidies extended. I don't know what the percentage is. The Republican leadership says it's 30, so let's say it's 40 to 50 because they're probably underplaying it. And Adam is right here in that if these subsidies go away, Republicans will be to blame. It is completely clear, right? Republicans are in control of government. If premiums go up 200%, Republicans are going to be to blame, which is why Jonathan is right that there is some nervousness at the White House. The White House does want to find a deal. Johnson says he wants to talk about a deal. He can't guarantee the outcome. He's not going to do it during a shutdown. My assumption is if the government ever opens up again, which it does, there's no light at the end of the tunnel that we're in right now, there will be a conversation. I'm a bit skeptical that they can come to an agreement. I think it's going to be very difficult. I think they're going to try, though, because I think most people with any sort of brain understand the political impact of this.
Brendan?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think what Marjorie Taylor Greene is probably emblematic of is people sort of waking up to this issue. I do some work on this in my day job. This is not something there is a lot of awareness of for people, and they wake up and they see the sort of stakes of it. And so I'll leave the substance aside, but as a political matter, highly politically relevant, I will say. And I think Marjorie Taylor Greene understands that, and I'm sure the leaders understand that.
Are they going to come to the table and negotiate? Is it your expectation?
I think you sort of have to set aside the shutdown. I think this issue was going to come ripe at some point anyway. I mean, people realize this is now happening and it's coming. So I think whether you're doing it in the context of a shutdown or not, shutdown is not my fight. There were going to have to be some type of conversation.
Yeah, listen, the subsidies expire at the beginning of next year, the end of this year, but people are getting their letters for what they're going to pay next year right about now. Open enrollment starts soon. So they're going to get notified that their premiums are going up, 2 times, 3 times. For some people, it will be completely unaffordable. And yeah, I guess it will come home to roost.